In this video, we'll learn about printing to the terminal and also getting input from the user and some arithmetic expressions. I'll start by opening a new window and getting to the server. And let's see, I'm just gonna first remove all of those things. You can see I can pass multiple files to remove, and it'll remove all of them. That asterisk is a wildcard, so it's saying remove everything that starts with P. So that can be dangerous to use the wildcard with remove, but if you really know that you're going to be okay, you can do that. So in order to show the C functions that we're going to look at for printing and getting input from the user, I'm actually just going to start with a program that already exists so that I don't have to type out the sort of boilerplate C code that we need in all of our programs. So you can also do this. I'm going to just copy a file from public. Let's move these here, maybe that's a good spot. Public, I think it was examples, chapter 2, and we saw miles to kilometer.c, right? And I'm actually going to paste it as printing practice.c. So I'm taking that file and I'm pasting it here with a new name, or I'm copying it here with a new name. And now let's take a look. There it is. So we've got printing practice.c. So we're not going to need this constant, so I'm going to delete it. I can do that with just typing dd. Now it's gone. I'm also going to remove another line. And if I want to remove multiple lines, I can also use visual mode. If I do a capital V, it'll highlight the entire line, and then I can use my J's or my K's to go up or down. So I'm going to use J to go down because I want to delete this comment because we don't need it. I'm going to delete that, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete everything in here except for the return statement because we do want that. All right, so we are going to learn about printing. So in C, I can print using the printf function for print format. I'll just start with a nice hello world. And so printf is going to take a string, a format string here, and let's see what this does. So I'm going to compile it. So I need to do GCC. I'm just going to call my executable file P for short. And then I also want the -wall flag here to give me all the warnings. And then I need to pass in my C file. And that compiled without warning, so I can go ahead and run it. And here we notice, okay, we got our hello world to print, but there's this weirdness where we don't have a new line here, right? So if I want to start a new line, I can use and so yeah, without that line, things are kind of weird. I'm actually going to type clear just to make my terminal look nice. And then I'll take a look at my file again. So I'm going to use E to get to the end where I want to be. And then I'm in insert mode here. And if I want a new line, I use the new line character, which is just going to be that \n. So if I right quit and I recompile and then I run my executable file, I see I now have a new line. So that's great. Let's also see, let's say I wanted another line. So I'm going to use some Vim tricks here. let's say I want to print hello world again. I can again use my visual line by capital V. I'm going to press Y for yank. So that's like copy, you know, in a Word document. And then I'm just going to press P for paste, and I paste what I yanked. So I just pasted below. I can press U to undo, and say I actually wanted to paste above, I could do Shift P. So capital P will paste above. So whichever one I want to do, let's say I want to paste below, I did undo and then I pasted. So now I would print hello world twice. Let's say I actually want to indent my second one just with one tab. I can add this tab character here, which is just my \T. That's going to give me one tab. Again, I did Shift V to highlight the whole line. I pressed Y to yank, and I'm going to press P. And let's say I want another line where I have two tabs. I just put two tab characters in there. So let's take a look at what this does. I right quit. I need to compile again. And now I'm going to run my program again. And just as we expected, we've got 3 lines. And on my second line, I've got 1 tab. And on my third line, I've got 2 tabs. Let's go ahead and see what we want to do next. So this printf function also allows us to print out variables that we have defined. So let's add some variable declarations. Let's say I'm going to have an integer a, I'm going to have a double b, and I'm going to have a character c. And let's just go ahead and assign a to be -10, b to be some double 0.91, and c to be some character. How about the character c? And now, I'm just going to delete 2 of these lines. Let's print one of these out. So say I want to print out the value a. I have defined variable a to be, and now I use what's called a placeholder. So my placeholders are going to start with the %sign, and then depending on the data type of what I'm going to pass in, I have different characters for my placeholders. So for ints, the placeholder is actually D. So if I want to pass in an int, I'm going to use D. And maybe I end my sentence with a period, and then I need my new line. And then I can use a comma to add another argument to my print function here. And what should that be? It should just be a. I just want to print out a, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I need to compile. It's giving me warnings that these are not used, so I could just ignore those, or maybe for now I'm just going to comment them out like this. So now the compiler is just going to ignore those. I think actually I'm still going to get, yeah, I still get the same warning, so let me also comment out their declarations. And now I don't get those warnings. And let me run my program. And so we see successfully we printed out our variable a. So we can also pass more than one variable in here. So let's try that. Okay, we're actually going to use these. So I'm using the X to just delete a single character. All of this is in normal mode. I don't have to go into insert mode to delete. And let's just make this a little shorter. So I have A, and I'm going to say A equals this placeholder. I also have B equals, and now I need a placeholder for B. So the placeholder for a double is F, and it's F. You can remember this because another word for a double is a float. And finally, I have C, and luckily the character placeholder is easy to remember. It's just a C. So now we have 3 placeholders, and so we need to pass in 3 variables here, 3 values, A, B, and C. And let's take a look at what happens here. I compile it, didn't get any warnings, that's nice. And I can see that I'm successfully printing the values of those variables. So that's great. So one thing I might notice here is, even though I entered my B as just 0.91, there's a bunch of zeros here. And I might want, if I have a float, I might want only a specific number of decimal places to be printed. And luckily for us, there is a built-in way to do that. So if I want to only print 2 decimal places for my floating point, for my double, I can just, before the F, I can put a .2. So period 2, and that's telling it that it should only print 2 decimal places. So let's try it. Need to compile and run, and you see now I have only 2 decimal places. I could have also asked for 3 decimal places and then I'd have 3, but that's going to be useful for your classworks and your labs. So we see how we can print. We can print nicely. We can format our printing. Another thing we might want to do is get input from the user. And we can do that using scanf. So let's say instead of defining A myself, I want to get A from the user. So I'm just going to delete this, and above, so if I want to create a new line, above I'm going to press Shift O, and that's just going to add a new line above, and it's going to put me right into insert mode. So I use that all the time. If I wanted to put a line below, I would just put lowercase o, but just for organizational purposes, I'm going to put it above because I'm going to get my A first, and that looks nicer to me if I get my A above my B and C. So I'm going to just prompt the user to give me a value for A. So I'm going to say enter an integer. And however I want to format this, I can do it like that. And so that's going to print enter an integer and then a space. And then whatever the user enters after that, if I use scanf, so scanf is a function that's just going to take in whatever the user enters and then presses enter. So the way that I need to do this is, again, I use my placeholder, and for ints, my placeholder is again a D. So I just have to put that placeholder there. I need to surround it by double quotes. And then I need to tell C where I want to store that. And so we want to store it in the variable A. So because of how this works, we're actually going to need to pass in the address of A. This is because the scope of the variable A is going to be local to that function, but we're going to get to this later. For now, all you need to remember is that when you're using scanf, instead of just passing in the variable that you want to assign the result to, you're going to need to pass in the address of, so that's ampersand. Put a little comment here, ampersand, which is this, is address of. So I'm going to assign whatever the user enters to the variable a. And let's just try that out, see if it works. Okay, we didn't get any errors, that's great. Let's run it. Okay, we need to enter an integer. I'm going to say 999. And great, we got 999 to print out. So similar to printf, if I want to get I need to use different placeholders for different data types. So let's say instead of defining B and C down here, I'm going to get them from the user. So I'm going to say enter an integer, a double, and a character. And now I'm going to take my integer. The placeholder for a double is actually LF when you use scanf, and I also want a character. So we'll try this. We'll see actually that something's going to go a little wrong for us. Ooh, B is unused. Oh, okay. Well, let's track down what's going on here. So if we look at our first warning, it says in function main, LF expects a matching double, but we're not passing it. It's not going to get any double because there's only one additional argument besides this string here. So what we need to do is make sure that the number of inputs matches the number of placeholders that we've defined. So this placeholder right here, that's for my integer. Now my LF placeholder is for my double, right? So I need to pass in address of my double variable is B, and finally this %C is the address of my character. So I need to pass in address of, or excuse me, that's for my character, so I pass in address of my character. So I think we'll fix those warnings now. Let's take a look, and no warnings, that's great. And let's run it. So we need to enter an integer. Let's try 3, a double, how about 9.1, and a character, how about C? So when this runs, it looks like we successfully entered our integer, we successfully entered our double, and remember we still have that 0.2 before our float, so that's why we're printing exactly 2 decimal places here. But it looks like C is actually being stored as a space. So what's happening here is if I want to separate these inputs with spaces, it's fine for my numeric data types, but for my character, I'm going to need to put a space in here. So this is going to work if I want to separate those inputs with white space, then I need a space there. So let's try this again. I'm just going to have to compile again and run, and let's try 4 negative 0.211. Ooh, let's see if I think it's going to round that. Let's try that. And a character C. So yeah, so now we successfully assigned our variable c to the character c instead of a space like we had before. We also see that the value of our variable b is in fact negative 0.219, but when I tell it to only print 2 decimal places, it rounds. So that is that for printing, formatting, and getting input from the user. You'll get lots of practice with this in your classwork and in your labs. And let's make one more C file here. Oops, I want to print it to, I want to copy it to a new C file where we can practice our arithmetic expressions. So again, actually, oh no, we probably do need that. So again, I'm just starting with the boilerplate here, and I'm going to define a little comment for us here to list the arithmetic expressions that we can use. So as you might expect, we have plus, we have minus, we have multiplication, we have division, and we also have the remainder operator. So plus, minus, multiplication all work how you'd expect. So I'm just going to go through some stuff about the remainder and division. So let's say I have 2 integers. I'm going to say one is called cookies, and that's going to be the number of cookies, and another is going to be kids, and that's going to be the number of kids. So let's say I know that there are 18 cookies, and let's say that there are 4 kids. So as you can see, I can actually combine I can set these variables in my declaration statements here if I want to be really slick. So when the division operator is working on integers, it does what we call integer division. And it's just going to give us back the number of times that, say, if I do int cookies per kid is going to be cookies per kid is going to be cookies divided by kids. It's going to tell us how many times does kids divide evenly into cookies, right? So I can fit, let's see, for 4, I think it's gonna fit in 4 times, right? So 4 times 4 is 16, but I can't fit any more 4s in 18. So let's try just printing this and seeing what we get. So we might say something like, I'm going to divide cookies by kids. So these are, I use my float placeholder, and I'm going to get cookies per kid. So I'm going to pass in 3 floats here. And let's end it with a new line so that we don't get weirdness when we run this. And what am I going to pass in? I'm going to say put cookies in here, put kids in here, and put cookies per kid as that last one. Cookies per kid. And I'm just going to get rid of this line. And let's compile this. I'll compile it to a file called A. I need my warnings, and it's this C file here. Oops. I need GCC. Okay. Oh, oopsies. So this is our warnings are helping us. This is saying format the placeholder $f, not colon, %f expects a double, but I'm passing in an int. That's a great point, compiler. So these should be D's, right? They're not floats. They are integers. Let's try again. Okay, no more warnings, and I don't think I've run it yet. So just as I predicted, 18 divided by 4 is 4 because it's integer division, right? Now, this is kind of useful because now we can also try to understand what this remainder does. So the remainder is what's left when we evenly divide. So we saw that we could evenly divide 4 into 18 4 times. That would be 16, and so there's 2 left over. And let's just take a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to make a integer called rem for remainder. I'm going to assign rem to be cookies, and then I'm going to use the remainder operator and input kids as well. And then let's take a look at the result, similar to what we did before. So I'm going to put in an integer. I'm going to say what's the remainder when I do it on another integer, and then I'm going to print out what I got, which is also going to be an integer. And then I need to put in the integers that I want. So what are they? They're cookies, kids, and rem. So let's see, just double check that we get what we hope that we get. Compile, and let's find where I run it. And indeed, the remainder is 2. So the last thing I want to show is what happens when we do division on doubles. Well, exactly what we'd expect. So let's create some doubles, double A, double B, and let's let A be 100.1, B be 10.2, and we'll see that we can, if we want to be fancy, we can actually just do that division in the printf. So, okay, I want to print a float, so we actually use the placeholder for float, and then what do we want to pass in here? A divided by B. And let's see if this runs. No warnings, that's great. And here I just got a float back. So division, I just need to be careful about whether I'm using integers or floats. And that's all for this video.